Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at individual rune choices that we have at the moment. So not keystones, that's pretty much all we've looked at so far. We're going to be looking at the runes underneath the keystone and on our secondary page as well, and help you build better rune pages in general pretty much. So which runes are winning the most? We're going to look at every single row, and then we're going to look at row 1, 2, and 3. Out of those 3 rows, which 2 are you going to take on a secondary page? And on those 2 rows, which of the 3 runes are performing the best, if that makes sense. So some of this will vary based on champion. Actually, a lot of it will vary based on champion, but I've taken an average on the roll to give you a good idea. Now, I'm actually looking at a lot of different sites for this, but Lowalytics is really good. I'll link it down below and you can go and look for yourself for your favorite champion. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you can actually see the primary and secondary rune win rates and pick rates. And basically, I've looked at loads and loads of these for every single role, put them all together to come out with an average. Now, if you want to skip to your role, that's absolutely fine. I think it's over there, the time as well, you can actually skip to, but it'll go AD carry, mid lane, jungle, top lane, and the best till last we have support, if that makes you feel a little bit better. So for AD carry, in our precision tree, which is the most popular, we have 3 very clear winners. So this is going to be the least variation at all. Triumph in row 1, healing is insane. It is going to get nerfed actually. In row 2, we have Legend Alacrity with the attack speed, it's the best one for damage. In row 3, we have Coup de Grace. It's the best at the moment with fewer tanks. Now, if we get loads more tanks, that might change, but for now, those are going to be the best. And if you're taking precision as your secondary tree, you're most likely going to be taking row 1 and row 3 and skipping row 2. Sorcery is a tree that is winning the most as a secondary page for AD carries. Domination is very popular, though actually more popular than sorcery. Row 1 is the least used. Nullifying Orb can be pretty good, but it's a bit situational and not really that great compared to row 2 and row 3. But Mana Flow Band is actually very good if it's your primary page and if you're playing more of a poke style. Row 2, Celerity is the best, slightly over Absolute Power, but you can take pretty much either of the 2 and come out on top. That's pretty good. Row 3, we're going to be looking at Gathering Storm, Scorch on a few more poke-based ones, but giving an AD carry, like scaling, infinite scaling AD into a game, late game, seems pretty good for me. For secondary, most games are going to be played with row 2 and row 3. Sorcery is kind of the best, but it is also the best for scaling, right? Domination is kind of for the first 30 minutes of the game as an AD carry. Row 1, Taste of Blood is the most popular. It heals and it makes lane a lot easier, kind of like how we had Feast in last season. It can be used on everybody. Sudden Impact is the best for damage ones though, who can actually use it. For row 2, we have Eyeball Collection, which is the best for damage champions by far. Row 3, Ravenous or Relentless Hunter, about the same. Healing can be really good if you're an ability-based AD carry. If not, move speed is always good. And for the secondary pages, most people will be running row 1 and row 2. For the mid lane, we mainly have mages and also a lot of bursts and assassins and stuff, right? So I'm going to try and cover both of those types within the same kind of thing. So for sorcery, everything seems really good here. Actually, I think it's probably the strongest tree by far at the moment. Even though electricity seems really good, sorcery is just really well rounded. For row 1, all 3 are very close. Now with the orb, it's actually really good versus AP and burst when you need it. It's the least popular, but it has the highest win rate on a lot of defenseless mages, kind of like an Orianna, for example, right? Mana Flow Band and Ultimate Hat are very similar pick and win rates. They're pretty good. Row 2, Transcendence is the most popular by far and looks to be the best on this row. Celerity is also very good, which you wouldn't really expect. And Absolute Power can be good, but seems like weaker slightly, I guess. Row 3, Scorch is the most popular and the highest win rate as well. Even on Assassin, it adds a bit more to your burst combo, which is really good, and your poke damage as well. Gathering Storm is actually also a good choice though, if you're more passive and you kind of just want to farm. Now for secondary, if you're taking it as secondary, most games you're going to be playing with row 2 and row 3. Domination is Assassin territory, right? And also pretty good for some mages as a secondary. It's not the most popular, but it can actually be pretty good. Row 1, Sudden Impact by far here, obviously, really is so good, and it increases electricity damage as well with the penetration, which is really cool. Taste of Blood is good if you can't use Sudden Impact, so more like a mage, for example. Row 2, Eyeball Collection, though, is really good. Zombie Ward is a bit better for mid laners because you're clearing more wards. And row 3, Ravenous Hunter. So most mid laners are heavily ability-based, which means ability healing is just pretty much ridiculous. Roamers can take Relentless Hunter, but I think Ravenous is a bit better. So for secondary, you're most likely going to be taking row 2 and row 3. The most popular secondary mage page is actually going to be Inspiration. Now, row 1, Perfect Timing for the stopwatch is the most popular. Biscuits come a close second, so either one of the 2 is pretty good. Row 2 is the free boots here. Actually, Futures Market can be good, but it's harder to use. It's also less used, so boots is kind of the preferred option, I guess. And row 3, Cosmic Insight. Free cooldown reduction is awesome, especially with Transcendence and Sorcery. The 2 together has really good synergy. Now, for secondary, most games you're going to be going row 1 or row 2, but almost always row 3. For precision, it's pretty easy. Row 1 is Triumph, like it's insane. Okay, row 2, stacking system doesn't actually work that well for ability based champions, there's nothing really great in there. And row 3, coup de grace. Targets are all low health, so for secondary, you're most likely going to be taking row 1 and row 3. Moving into the jungle, domination first of all, okay? Sudden impact is better than everything else here. Cheap shot seems like it can't really keep up with sudden impact's damage with the penetration, unless you can't use sudden impact, I guess. Row 2 is much more even in the jungle, actually, but eyeball is still the best, followed closely by zombie ward. Junglers do clear more wards, so in theory, it is going to be a bit better. You're going to get more value out of that rune. In row 3, Relentless Hunter, much better than other roles. It catches up to Ravenous now. Ravenous scales better into teamfights and stuff, but Relentless is more for early to mid game with running around. So for secondary, most people are taking row 1 and then row 3. If you're going to take sorcery as your secondary, row 1, Orb or Ultimate Hat, it kind of depends on the champion and the game and stuff. Both can be really good, but actually Ultimate Hat is better on a lot of different champions that work, for example. Row 2 is more popular. Celerity here, of course, the move speed to move around and more damage is really, really popular with junglers. Row 3, water walking, move speed in the river. The synergy with Celerity as well. You take 2 together, really, really good. Gathering Storm is actually okay for more late game damage as well. So for secondary, mostly people are taking row 2 and row 3. For precision, you can kind of guess where this is going, but a little bit different. Row 1 is Triumph, but Overheal is pretty close, especially on champions who can use the healing like Warwick or Xin Zhao. Row 2, Alacrity, but also the Tenacity is pretty good, so you have a few choices there. Row 3, Coup de grace is still the best, but actually Last Stand is pretty cool as well. It does more damage for the lower health you are, and with a tank, that percentage health is going to be more so you don't instantly die. For secondary, most games though, people are taking row 1 and row 3. First time Resolve is actually mentioned in this video, which shows you it's really like a tank mastery at the moment. It's not very often as secondary, but quite a lot as primary. Row 1 is Unflinching and Font of Life. They're both really, really good, and the most popular ones kind of shared evenly. The healing is nuts from Font of Life. Row 2, Conditioning, best overall by a mile, actually. Row 3, Second Wind is the best, the highest win rate in general. Even though it only procs healing when you're damaged by a champion, so I guess in ganks, like, it's hard to kill, or maybe it's just way too strong, I don't know. Overgrowth is also very good though for the extra health and stuff. It is a bit more common actually. For secondary, remember, not me take this, but it's actually row 2 almost always, and then mostly row 3 over row 1. So row 3 and row 2. Moving on to the top lane, Resolve is actually way more popular now. People are using it quite a lot as a primary and a secondary at the same time. Row 1 is literally very even between all 3 of these in the top lane. Font of Life and Unflinching are more popular, but Demolish as a top laner is actually really good at the moment. Row 2, Conditioning again. Iron Skin sometimes, but like if you can just last 10 minutes, Conditioning is going to be better, so most people take that. Row 3, Second Wind becomes pretty busted in a lane phase situation. If you don't need regen, you can take Overgrowth instead, but for secondary, most people are going row 2 and then row 3. Going from like tank to damage, Domination is actually pretty popular as well, just because it's pretty strong and we have a lot of damage champions right now. Row 1, Sudden Impact and Taste of Blood are very close, but actually Cheap Shot is more viable in the top lane than other roles. Either like even or just a 1 to 2% win rate difference, which isn't that much. Row 2, Ghost Poro is better here as well than on others. I guess they're going to use it in the bushes and stuff top lane for some control. Eyeball is most popular, but the row actually isn't used that much. Row 3 is more popular. Mostly Ravenous Hunter used way more. It's got a better win rate. Don't roam a ton, so Relentless doesn't really make as much sense. Now for secondary, most games go R1, so row 1 and row 3, but row 2 isn't that bad if you want to swap your row 3 for it. Sorcery is actually used a lot when you have a Resolve primary, so row 1 is Ultimate Hat, which is used the most. A few champions use Mana Flow Band as well, but mostly it's Ultimate Hat. Row 2, Transcendence on tanks is really, really good. This is what they take most of the time. Damage champions actually take Celerity instead if they don't want the cooldown reduction. Row 3, Scorch is the most popular and best in general on tanks and damage champions, actually both. Gathering Storm is always a good option, I guess, but Scorch is winning the most at the moment. So for secondary, most games are row 2 and row 3, or row 1 and row 3 if you don't want cooldown reduction and you just kind of need some mana or some more ultimates. I don't even want to talk about precision again because it's the same. Triumph by far is the best. Overheal is a runner-up in row 1. Row 2, normally actually Tenacity rather than the attack speed for top lane, or unless you're playing like Jax or Fiora or something like that. Row 3, Coup de grace or Last Stand on tanks. And for secondary, most people are taking row 1 and row 3 like everybody else. Inspiration is also used a lot with Resolve primary, so either Sorcery or Inspiration as a secondary for Resolve. Row 1, Biscuits mostly. Tanks don't really need the stopwatch that much, I guess, and Gargoyle Stoneplate isn't really in favor as an item, I guess. Row 2, Free Boots over anything else that wins the most, even though futures is actually more popular, boots is winning a lot more. Row 3, Cosmic Insight. Others are just like better for top lane than other roles, I guess. Like they actually can be used, but Cosmic Insight is still just the best so far. And for secondary, most games are row 3 and then row 2, or you can swap row 2 for row 1. Finally then, for support, Sorcery is by far the most popular. You can slot this into pretty much any build with any primary or secondary, whatever. It just fits everywhere. Row 1, Mana Flow Band by a mile for supports. Now, on a few, like Soraka and Lulu, who are very ultimate dependent, Ultimate Hat can actually be really good, but Mana Flow Band is by far the most popular and wins the most as well. Row 2, Transcendence, obviously most popular as expected because cooldown reduction on supports is really good, but actually Celerity has a higher win rate at the moment and still picked a good amount. Absolute Power and Damage champions who also have a heal, so Sona, kind of Soraka, I guess. Nami though is a lot better than I thought it would be because they actually stay really high health with their heals anyway and do some damage. Row 3, Scorch for the lane poke is absolutely ridiculous. It's really strong. Gathering Storm can make your heals and shields late game a bit better, but I think Scorch for early pressure is a bit better. For secondary, most people go row 1 and row 3. Inspiration is very popular for supports, obviously. Row 1, Biscuits is the clear winner. Perfect Timing is actually pretty good though, which I didn't really expect. Row 2, Free Boots wins a lot more most supports. Our futures market is like okay and very close on aggressive supports, which I guess you can like kind of buy your Mo boots a lot earlier and roam a bit earlier. Row 3 though, Cosmic Insight foremost, but Approach Velocity has a good win rate as well, and it's probably a lot better than you think it is, especially on actually a lot of different champions can use this and do pretty well with it. For secondary, most actually go row 2 and row 3, but if you want Biscuits like really badly, swap row 2 for row 1. Resolve is really popular, but more on like tanky champions, I guess, or actually healers at the same time. So row 1, Font of Life, extra healing is really good. There isn't actually that much choice to this tree. Row 2, Iron Skin is used more, but conditioning has a higher win rate and is actually winning more on everybody in general. Row 3, Revitalize on healers is so good. Tank supports though tend to win more with second win than Overgrowth though. Even though you think the extra health is really good, actually having the regen is better because we have a lot of poke supports. For secondary, most games people go row 1 and row 3. They actually skip row 2, but most secondary users are healers. So it's Font of Life and Revitalize, which together are just amazing. So that wraps up how the runes are performing in every role right now. This was a really weird video to work out how to do because I wasn't sure the best way of making it clear, but actually still useful at the same time. But hopefully it gives you a really good idea what to take on your pages now and you can try out some new stuff. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, remember to turn on the notifications with the little bell above the video. But for now, I'll leave you with the robots.